Picture this. You're walking through the Forum in ancient Rome. The marble beneath your sandals is warm. Merchants call out. Senators argue under the colonnades. Incense drifts through the air. Then, everything stills. The crowd stops. A hush spreads. Eyes turn. The emperor is coming. Nero, draped in embroidered silk, flanked by guards. Regal. Untouchable. But that's not what holds your gaze. It's the person beside him. A young woman, it seems. Gown trailing behind. Skin powdered. Movements delicate. But something feels wrong. Her face is too perfect. Her silence too sharp. And the whispers start immediately. That's not a woman. And they're right. His name is Sporus, or it was. Not long ago, he was a boy, a palace servant, one of many. Now, he walks like an empress. Why? Because Nero saw something, a face, a resemblance to someone lost. Poppaea Sabina, Nero's wife, dead, some say by his own hand. He couldn't let her go. And when he saw Sporus, young, fragile, familiar, he made a decision. Not to mourn, not to repent, but to recreate. He ordered the transformation, the clothes, the behavior, the surgery. He turned grief into control. And this walk through the Forum, it's not a procession, it's a message, a warning. I can make the dead live again. And if you dare question it, you disappear. Sporus couldn't refuse, not in Nero's world, not with Roman power behind every breath. This was how his nightmare began, with a look, with a command, and with a name he was never meant to wear. Nero wasn't always the tyrant history remembers. When he took the throne at just 16, the empire felt hopeful. He reduced taxes, banned public executions, gave away free grain, opened theaters, and funded games for the masses. To the Roman people, he was generous. To the Senate, he was promising. And to his early advisors, Seneca and Burrus, he was a moldable young prince. But Nero didn't crave power the way past emperors had. He wanted applause, spotlight, adoration. He played the lyre, acted on stage, wrote poetry. He saw himself not as a ruler, but as an artist in a world built to watch him perform. For a while it worked. Rome prospered, crowds cheered, his name echoed in the amphitheaters. But power, unchecked, changes people, especially when no one dares say no. By the time he reached his 20s, Nero had turned inward, suspicious, erratic, afraid of being replaced. He began eliminating anyone who made him feel insecure. Political rivals, childhood friends, even his own family. His mother, Agrippina, the very woman who schemed to place him on the throne, was stabbed and drowned on his orders. His wife, Octavia, exiled, then executed. No one was safe, and through it all, Nero grew more isolated, surrounded only by flatterers, performers, and servants who feared his moods more than they respected his rule. Then came Poppaea Sabina. She wasn't just beautiful, she was ambitious, sharp, magnetic. Where others bowed, she challenged him. Where others feared him, she enchanted him. And for a while, she became the axis of his world. But with that devotion came something darker. Not love, not respect, possession. Poppaea became more than a partner. She became a symbol of power, of perfection, of the world Nero thought he controlled. But symbols can shatter. And when this one did, so did the man who worshipped her. Poppaea Sabina wasn't just Nero's wife. She was the center of his obsession, graceful, charismatic, calculating. She had once been married to a general, then to the future governor of Egypt. Every move she made advanced her status. When she met Nero, she knew what he craved, and gave it to him. Validation, excitement, the illusion of control. She played her role perfectly, supportive in public, sharp behind closed doors, She encouraged Nero's artistic ambitions, even as she maneuvered herself into power. But ambition comes with a price. Nero was already married to Octavia, the daughter of the previous emperor. Poppaea pushed for Octavia's exile and got it. A short time later, Octavia was executed. Poppaea took her place on the throne, and for a while, it seemed Nero had found peace. He showed her off at banquets, commissioned statues in her image, bought her perfumes from Arabia, silks from the East. He built entire rooms in her honor. But the deeper his love grew, the more unstable it became. He watched her constantly, isolated her, controlled her. To the court, it was devotion, but to those who looked closer, it was suffocation. And then came the night everything changed. She was pregnant, carrying Nero's child. The argument was minor. Some say it was about Nero's late-night returns from the theater. Others say she insulted one of his performances. But in a flash, it turned violent. A single blow, maybe more. Nero struck her hard. She collapsed. By morning, she was dead, along with the unborn heir. What followed wasn't grief. It was something else. He refused to cremate her as tradition demanded. Instead, he embalmed her, built her a temple, declared her a goddess, and began talking to her corpse. He made servants leave a seat for her at dinner, had musicians play her favorite songs. Anyone who failed to play along disappeared. The Emperor of Rome, now ruled by ghosts. And in that void, something darker began to form. He needed her back. And then he saw Sporus. Sporus was just a boy, barely a teenager, a freed slave in the palace, educated, polite, fragile-looking. He had no idea he was being watched, until one day, Nero saw him and froze, because in that young face, the emperor saw something haunting, a resemblance, not vague, not distant, eerily close, the curve of the cheeks, the shape of the eyes, the delicate features. Sporus looked like Poppaea, and Nero, already broken by guilt, already drowning in delusion, saw a chance, a way to bring her back. Not through memory, through transformation. He summoned Sporus, had him cleaned, dressed, and began calling him by Poppaea's name. At first it was small, jewelry, perfume, silk robes. Then came the behavior lessons, the voice training. Then the surgery. Crude, dangerous, painful. Nero ordered it, and Roman physicians obeyed. Because saying no to the emperor wasn't an option. Sporus didn't consent. He didn't resist either. How could he? He was a teenager, in a palace, under the thumb of the most powerful man in the world. And now, he was being remade. Into a ghost, into a memory, into a lie the emperor needed to believe. The surgery was not a whisper behind closed doors. It was a command from a throne. Nero ordered it. Rome complied. There were no modern tools, no anesthesia, no mercy, only instruments. Heated metal, cloth to muffle screams. Sporus was held down. The operation was performed. It wasn't medicine. It was mutilation. Its goal, one thing, to erase him. Afterward, the court whispered, but no one spoke out, because what followed was even more surreal. Nero announced a wedding, not a rumor, not a metaphor, a state event. He would marry Sporus, in public, with rituals, legal papers, crowds. Sporus would be the bride. He was renamed Sabina, given the same name as the dead empress. He was dressed in the finest gowns, the same perfumes, the same makeup, the same jewelry Poppaea once wore. And in the palace, rooms were redecorated, duplicated. Every detail of Poppaea's life copied. It was no longer grief. It was fantasy. The wedding happened in spring of 67 AD. Nero wore robes of gold. Musicians played, servants wept, or pretended to. Because everyone knew this wasn't love. It was obsession, madness, a performance forced onto flesh. And Sporus, he stood at the altar, in the dress, in the silence. A child, made to be a symbol, a living ghost. And the world applauded, because no one dared do anything else. After the wedding, Sporus wasn't a slave, or a freedman. He was something else, an empress, at least in title. He was given his own entourage, maids, guards, tutors, a daily routine. His new name, Sabina, spoken with forced reverence by every courtier. But Sporus wasn't living. He was performing. Every day he wore Poppaea's gowns, sat where she once sat, spoke as she might have spoken. His chambers were decorated like hers, the scent of her perfumes filled the air. He was expected to smile when Nero made a joke, to cry at the right time during theater, to look adoringly when the emperor sang, all while knowing he wasn't her. But Nero refused to break the illusion. He introduced Sporus as his wife, took him on diplomatic visits, even made him sit beside him at state functions, veiled, jeweled, silent. Foreign dignitaries smiled, Roman elites bowed. But everyone knew. They just couldn't say it, because to deny the illusion was to insult the emperor. And that could cost you everything. Meanwhile, Sporus endured. Inside, a boy trapped in a lie. Outside, the most unnatural bride in Roman history. Every morning, Sporus woke in silence. The scent of incense, the brush of silk robes, the weight of jewelry that once belonged to a woman he'd never met. He was no longer spoken to, only spoken at. Maids adjusted his hair. Eunuchs applied his makeup. Voice tutors corrected the tone of his replies. Higher, softer, smile when addressed. This wasn't a life. It was a role. And the script had been written by a madman. Nero believed the lie completely. He called Sporus Sabina in public and private, whispered sweet things as if talking to Poppaea herself. When hosting dignitaries, he'd gesture toward Sporus and say, "My wife." The goddess returned, and those dignitaries, they played along, because survival meant applause, even if your hands trembled. Sporus traveled with Nero, attended ceremonies, sat on gilded thrones beside him. But behind every gaze, pity, horror, confusion, and Sporus felt it all. He wasn't insane, just trapped in a role he never auditioned for, wearing the face of someone else's grief. He learned quickly, silence was safety. Stillness was survival. Any misstep could spark Nero's rage, or worse, his affection. The court whispered behind their hands. They called it tragic, but no one helped him. Because in Rome, appearances mattered more than mercy. And Sporus, he had become the most delicate illusion of all. In 67 AD, Nero left Rome. He wasn't fleeing, not yet. He was performing. Greece had always fascinated him, not for its politics, but for its theaters, temples, and stages. He entered music competitions, recited poetry, sang before foreign crowds. Every city greeted him like a god, or pretended to. He demanded standing ovations, gold wreaths, marble statues carved in his honor. And beside him, always, was Sporus, draped in white, silent, watching. Greek nobles whispered. Was this a priestess? A mistress? A daughter? No one said the truth out loud, because the truth was more disturbing. Nero had brought the memory of his dead wife with him, rebuilt in flesh, redressed in silk. Sporus became a symbol not just of madness, but of Rome's decay. Everywhere they went, the performance continued. New robes, new perfumes, new rehearsed smiles. Behind them, Rome smoldered. The empire needed leadership. But Nero was too busy being worshipped. He wasn't governing, he was pretending. And while he performed for foreign crowds, his enemies began to circle. Back home, governors whispered, generals plotted, the emperor was distracted, and Rome was ready to choose someone else. By 68 AD, Rome had had enough. The Senate was restless, the army resentful, the provinces ignored. While Nero played the lyre in Corinth, revolts spread like wildfire. In Gaul, in Hispania, in Africa, governors declared rebellion. Rome needed leadership. Nero gave them music. He returned to Italy not to rule, but to hide. His own Praetorian Guard, the emperor's elite protectors, turned on him. They stopped showing up, stopped saluting, and finally, they joined the Senate in declaring Nero an enemy of the state. He ran, not with soldiers or commanders, with servants, a handful of loyal slaves, and Sporus. They escaped to a villa outside the city. Nero wept. He panicked. He rehearsed a final speech, one last performance, but no crowd came. He begged someone to kill him. No one moved. Eventually, Nero took the blade himself. With trembling hands, he ended the show. And with that, the stage was empty. But Sporus' story wasn't over. With Nero dead, chaos followed. The empire was leaderless, Rome was in shock, and Sporus, he became something strange, a symbol, a curiosity, a possession. One of the first to claim him was Nymphidius Sabinus, a powerful member of the Praetorian Guard. He had ambitions, big ones. And what better way to legitimize himself than by taking Nero's wife? He paraded Sporus through the barracks, not as a victim, but as a prize. Whispers returned. Isn't that the boy Nero married? Sporus was given jewels again, dresses again, the illusion resurrected. But it didn't last. Sabinus' coup failed. He was executed, and Sporus handed off, again. Next came Otho, a former friend of Nero, another short-lived emperor. He took Sporus into his household, maybe as protection, maybe as a trophy. No one asked Sporus what he wanted. Then came Vitellius, brutal, crude, hungry for spectacle. He didn't see Sporus as a person. He saw him as entertainment. And what he planned would push Sporus to his final breaking point. Vitellius didn't want Sporus for companionship or comfort. He wanted him for spectacle. The Colosseum was being prepared, not for lions, not for gladiators, but for a performance, a grotesque reenactment of myth. The myth of Proserpina, a goddess seized, dragged to the underworld, violated by a god. Vitellius planned to reenact it in front of tens of thousands, and Sporus would play Proserpina, the boy once forced to be a bride, now condemned to be a symbol of conquest, a play without mercy, a mockery without escape. When the plan became clear, Sporus fell silent. He had endured the silks, the throne, the whispered laughter. But this was the final line. He had no weapons, no allies, no future, but he had one choice left. And so, quietly, alone, he made it. Before the arena lights could rise, before the crowd could cheer, Sporus took his own life, probably by poison. He was no older than 20, and for the first time, the performance ended on his own terms.